An updated version of Ulduar was just released in a new version of the PTR today, and this is the first version we're able to go in on the new Unholy Death Knights that have just seen this huge nerf to the way their gargoyles work. And today I just want to say a little bit about how it felt going in as an Unholy DK into Ulduar. Did you feel completely useless? Our Unholy DK is completely dead on arrival? All of that. Now, if you want to know something that's a lot less of a candid quick conversation, we did a Q&A over on Fonzis's Discord with White Wolf and Rugs earlier today, and I'm anticipating White Wolf will probably put it up on YouTube, the whole thing. I'll try to cut a short version and put it up on the channel memberships, so if you want to see it, you can find it on the channel memberships, and maybe it'll go live on YouTube soon. But if you want to see a full Q&A about how the class is going to look for the future, ways you can improve the class, or how you can play it now, then make sure to check out the channel memberships, or even better, check out White Wolf's channel on YouTube. And one more time, shout out to Fonzis for inviting me to that Q&A, and his Discord will be in the link below. Now, first of all, if you've been under a rock this last day, you probably missed all of the crazy memes about Unholy DK is getting destroyed with a nerf. Your gargoyles are no longer snapshotting. What's happening now is that your gargoyle's haste is now going to be dynamic, meaning it updates every single cast. So you want to stay in Unholy Presence during your gargoyle summon while it's casting at least. You want to have Bloodlust up the entire time. You want to make sure you're using trinkets that you can control, like actually having things like Mark of Norganon, or Nomergan as I call it on stream. And you also obviously want to use Haste Pot only when your gargoyle starts casting, which is usually about 3 seconds into the cast of gargoyle himself. So he usually saves up for about 27 seconds of full cast times. Now, a lot of the math was now done to see how big of a haste nerf this was to gargoyles. And one part that is kind of large is that people were thinking maybe we're going to scale with stacking attack power now, but the attack power scaling and the attack power coefficient on gargoyles is extremely low. But right now, you're really still focused on haste buffs. I went into the raid today myself with my guild, None of the Above, to see how the actual Unholies are scaling, how they feel towards next phase. And what's a huge difference is going to be your playstyle, making sure that you're proccing your CDs after Unholy or after your Gary is summoned and already is about to start casting. And then you're still going to be snapshotting attack power, as well as you're still fully snapshotting your Army of the Dead. Now, DKs can still do a lot of damage during their burst windows. The hard part is that gargoyles do a lot less damage. Now, for instance, instead of seeing gargoyles do something like, usually we would see somewhere between 60 to 76 casts of gargoyle, which is an amazing snapshot. Now we're seeing gargoyles sit around 35 to 45 casts. Now that's a huge kind of standard deviation. There's a lot of variance there, but if you get a lot of your procs during gargoyle being summoned, you might see something like 45 casts. Now on this fight in the background, I used all of my abilities fighting against the heart, which has twice the damage taken. I didn't have Bloodlust against it, but I did play this really well so that I was still able to do pretty well on the damage meters. Now, the hard part to kind of articulate is that Ulduar's not really a situation where we're kind of doing a patchwork style fight, where you're just fighting a boss and seeing how fast you can burn it right away. Pop all your CDs and Bloodlust right at the start and see if the boss dies. Now, we have a lot of things we need to deal with, where a lot of damage during certain portions of the fight really doesn't matter at all. You need to focus on a lot of adds, you need to focus on a lot of mechanics, or you need to focus on different burst windows. And one thing that's really hurts is our massive burst window, which used to be the strongest point of an Unholy DK. Now, Unholy DKs are still pretty good with actual cleave. They're phenomenal with cleave, and you'll see on the damage meters, things will look really good for some Unholies on the PTR right now, but that's because that damage is just kind of being spread out. You've got Death and Decay on the ground, and there's adds that technically don't really take damage towards anything like a parse or helping the fight itself. It's just kind of damage that's added on inherently by being a Death Knight. So that part doesn't get nerfed at all. What's nerfed obviously is just your single target burst damage, and gargoyles were doing somewhere around, a good one that I saw was 150,000 damage. For reference, I've seen gargoyles do about 268 6,000 damage from a really good snapshot. So that's saying you're losing about 100,000 damage if you have, again, a very solid snapshot or very solid procs. It's no longer necessarily fully a snapshot other than attack power snapshotting. So if you have very solid procs, you're not gonna look nearly as good as you would if you had a phenomenal snapshot in those burst windows. But the fights are very long, so the amount of damage we actually lose has been calculated to be about 25 to 35% of our actual gargoyle damage. But again, we're seeing Gary's do around 100 to 150,000 damage. So you're definitely losing out on a ton of damage during your snapshot windows, but it doesn't feel like this is the be all end all nerf for Unholy DKs. It kind of seems like you're gonna do all right. Now, we don't scale nearly as well as we used to, and we lose prio on things like Comet's Trail, which would have been absolutely just given to an Unholy DK without a second thought. But for now, it doesn't seem, at least for first impressions, like it's the end of the class Unholy Death Knight. And again, I want to stress this is from day one of testing. The DK Discord is doing a ton of theory crafting, running a ton of simulations and numbers to make sure that we can see the best way to play the class and the best way to get the most DPS out of it and how bad this actual nerf hits us. But more will be discovered in the coming weeks as well as after the weekend, which I'll keep you updated after that. Again, guys, this is just my first thoughts. And if you want to check out that full Q&A, make sure to check out White Wolf's channel, as well as make sure you're looking into Fonzis's Discord. And I'll have a short version of the Q&A up in the channel memberships. Have a good weekend, guys. Enjoy the Ulduar testing and let me know in the comments what you think about these nerfs. If it was too much, if it's not too crazy, if you think the class is still viable, or what you might be re-rolling to if you're gonna re-roll.